SIG-2-3, it's 20 December 2020. This is more of the bit of the news from the Epoch Times. Joe Biden appears to outperform in counties using Dominion or HART voting machines, says a data analyst. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden outperforms in counties that use the Dominion or HART intercivic voting machines, according to a data analyst. Analysis evidence suggests the use of the Dominion X ICX BMD ballot marking device machine manufactured by Dominion Voting Systems and machines from HART Intercivic appear to have abnormally influenced election results, the data analyst wrote in a report that went public on Thursday. The data analyst, who chose to remain anonymous for safety reasons, has 30 years' experience in data analysis, according to his profile, reviewed by the Epoch Times. In his research, he used voting data and 2017 census data to set up a baseline scenario to predict the election result. Then, he used the baseline model to compare the results of the November election. The results show Biden falling above the prediction line in 78% of counties that use voting machines from those two companies. His analysis also indicates that Biden consistently received 5.6% more votes in those counties than he should have. That should not happen. The counties using Dominion machines are clearly too high, he said in a video introducing his research results. This is a dramatic red flag in my opinion. Something's going on here. He said that the 5.6% pattern is not caused by the above-mentioned voting machines being widely used in strong Democratic counties, as it can also be found in counties that have strong support for President Donald Trump. His research has not been peer-reviewed. HART Intercivic didn't immediately respond to a request for comment from the Epoch Times. Dominion Voting Machines refused to comment on the results of the analysis. The company said that courts of law across America have confirmed multiple times that there is no credible evidence to suggest any vote switching or fraud using Dominion voting systems. Maybe if they actually heard the cases. You know, like maybe if there was a court, some sort of court that was above all the others, you know, holding a lofty, a lofty position, something, sort of, sort of to be the overriding court above all the other courts, holding a place of supremacy in our courts of law. Kind of like, if we had a Supreme Court. The analysis said it didn't draw any conclusion on who caused the possible irregularities. However, he believes that there must be a big scheme if the potential irregularities in his analysis have been caused by intentional activities. The patterns I'm seeing are across many counties. So my findings concern an organization with large-scale national impact. That is, what I'm seeing is not a local optical scan operator running a box of ballots through the system 3 times. He didn't name any company or related party for wrongdoing. The Supreme Court responds to a claim that about John Roberts. The court says they haven't actually met in person. So, thought this is interesting. A spokesperson for the U.S. Supreme Court, if we had one, disputed a report that claimed Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts shouted at the 8 other justices in a room in the High Court, urging them not to take up the Texas election lawsuit against 4 other key states. As guidance, the court has been conducting its conferences remotely by phone since March, when the building closed due to the pandemic, a Supreme Court spokesperson told the Epoch Times via email on Friday in response to a question about the claim. The statement contradicts what a GOP Texas elector, Matt Patrick, said earlier this week, claiming that an anonymous person said that, quote, the justices went into a closed room to determine whether to take the Texas lawsuit that was eventually dismissed. Then, according to the elector, when the Texas case was brought up, he said he heard screaming through the walls as Justice Roberts and the other liberal justices were insisting, afraid of what would happen if they did the right thing. The claim also appeared on Hal Turner's website, sourcing an alleged, quote, clerk for one of the Supreme Court justices. It is unclear where Patrick obtained his information. The article asserted, usually it is very calm. However, today we could hear screaming all the way down the hall. They met in person because they didn't trust telephonic meeting as secure. Chief Justice Roberts was screaming, are you going to be responsible for the rioting if we hear this case? According to the Supreme Court's website, the justices have not met in person for months in the midst of the CCP virus pandemic. The court will hear all oral arguments scheduled for the November and December sessions by telephone conference. In keeping with public health guidance in response to COVID-19, the justices and counsel will all participate remotely. The oral arguments are scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. On days when more than one case will be heard, there will be a 3-minute pause before the second case begins, the court's website says. Another Republican elector in Texas entered information about the alleged Supreme Court argument during the Electoral College meeting on Monday, December 14, which is, well, that just passed, suggesting the other GOP electors should not rely on hearsay. Sending a message like this to a body of legislators or judicial officers is not going to get the attention you want to get. Nobody knows what happened in that conference room on purpose. Hearing yelling, the triple hearsay, quadruple hearsay now, about what is going on in that room, you cannot make your decision on that basis, the other elector, Jim Pickle, said. On December 11, the court dismissed the lawsuit filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton against Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania due to lack of standing. If it's not heard, how would you know? Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito said they would have taken up the case. Since then, the Supreme Court has drawn criticism from President Donald Trump and other Republicans for not taking up Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's lawsuit, saying essentially that the majority of the court's justices showed lack of moral character. No, it's called lack of a spine. They're basically just cowards for not hearing the case in light of alleged election fraud. Alleged that has well over 2,000 affidavits, sworn affidavits, eyewitness testimony. Yeah, alleged. Now you have the Supreme Court that's really just decided, it seems like, on a political whim, not to hear this case when you clearly have the interests of 80 million American voters whose votes were disenfranchised based on the corruption, based on the ignoring the rules in these states. Trump attorney Jenna Ellis told Newsmax. How they could pass on this is shocking. I think it's morally outrageous. It's treasonous. And quite frankly, the 80 million voters who were just disenfranchised, if nothing changes between now and January the 20th, those 80 million people should make what Antifa and Black Lives Matter, what they've done over the summer, they should make that look like it's child's play. It is treasonous. Lastly, December 19, 2020. This is the report by Peter Navarro, 36-page report on irregularities. People used to know how to deal with treason at one time in this country. President Donald Trump heaped praise on a 36-page report by Peter Navarro on alleged irregularities across key battleground states in the 2020 presidential election. Peter Navarro releases 36-page report alleging election fraud, more than sufficient to swing victory to Trump. A great report by Peter, statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election, the president wrote on Twitter in the early hours of Saturday. Navarro, who is a White House advisor to the president and the director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy, released the report on December 17 in his capacity as a private citizen. From the findings of this report, it is possible to infer what may have well been a coordinated strategy to effectively stack the election deck against the Trump-Pence ticket, Navarro wrote. Indeed, the patterns of election irregularities observed in this report are so consistent across the 6 battleground states that they suggest a coordinated strategy, if not to steal the election, then to strategically game the election process in such a way as to unfairly tilt the playing field in favor of the Biden-Harris ticket. The report examined 6 dimensions of alleged election irregularities in the battleground states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, as well as Arizona and Nevada. Summary findings regarding election irregularities in 6 battleground states. They include outright voter fraud, ballot mishandling, contestable process fouls, equal protection clause violations, voting machine irregularities, and significant statistical anomalies, according to Navarro. Each dimension is further categorized into several subsets in the report. For example, the report notes that outright voter fraud encompasses a number of phenomena, including large-scale manufacturing of fake ballots, bribery, dead voters, ballots cast by ineligible voters such as felons and illegal aliens, ballots counted multiple times, and illegal out-of-state voters. Summary of findings regarding outright voter fraud in 6 battleground states. This was a theft by 1,000 cuts across 6 dimensions and 6 battleground states rather than any one single silver bullet election irregularity, Navarro wrote in his concluding observations. While all 6 battleground states exhibit most or all 6 dimensions of election irregularities, each state has a unique mix of issues that might be considered most important. He took a heavy tone for what he calls the anti-Trump media and censoring social media for being complicit in blocking Americans from the truth of the situation, writing, "This is a dangerous game that simultaneously undermines the credibility of the media." The credibility of the media, at least in my eyes, has been undermined for at least since 1993. And the stability of our political system and the republic. I would be more concerned about the stability of the republic right now. I give a rat's ass about the political system because there's corruption in both parties from the top to the bottom. And, what are we doing here? What really are we doing here? We're playing freaking games. Navarro called for journalists and political leaders who have been involved in such efforts to acknowledge the election irregularities and carry out investigations into the 2020 election. Are you kidding me? You need to quit smoking the crap that's between your toes, Navarro, like it's ever gonna freaking happen. White House advisor Peter Navarro, whatever. If this is not done before Inauguration Day, we risk putting into power an illegitimate and illegal president lacking the support of a large segment of the American people, he wrote, adding that if election irregularities are not fully investigated before January 20, the nation may never have a fair presidential election again. You think? He decried what he called failures of Republican governors in Georgia and Arizona, as well as the state legislatures of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, where Republicans hold majorities in both chambers, to initiate investigations into alleged election irregularities. In other words, they should have been getting off their dead lazy asses. Unless this is really just what they want. Navarro also said that state and federal courts, including the Supreme Court, have failed the American people in refusing to appropriately adjudicate the election irregularities that have come before them. Trump and other third parties have sought legal challenges across the 6 battleground states since November 3rd, but no efforts have turned out as desired. Well, if nobody wants to do anything, then they're basically all working for the Democrats. Every single one. And since the Lawyers Guild or wherever the hell these people are, a large majority of attorneys and attorneys who turn into politicians, they're basically all just liberal Marxists. What do you expect? They've been trying to undermine this country for well over 50 years. Trump and other third parties have sought legal challenges across the 6 battleground states since November 3rd, but no efforts have turned out as desired. The Supreme Court has recently declined to hear cases brought from Texas and Pennsylvania challenging the integrity and outcome of the election. That's because maybe they're bought. You couldn't stack a better court for the Democrats than the Supreme Court right now. Republican electors in 7 states earlier this week cast dueling votes for Trump, except for maybe the ones in Michigan who weren't even allowed into the House to cast their votes. The Democrat electors got to, but the Republican electors didn't. They have explained that casting their votes would preserve Trump's legal claim and multiple lawsuits contesting the election results. Their votes come from the same states formally appointed. Their votes come as the same states formally appointed Democrat electors who voted for Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris. Yeah. Well, that's it for that. All right. Links at the bottom. Sue 23 out.